Tell me, you who want to be under the law, are you not aware of what the law says? For it is written that Abraham had 2 sons, one by the slave woman and the other by the free woman. His son by the slave woman was born according to the flesh, but his son by the free woman was born as the result of a divine promise. These things are being taken figuratively. The women represent 2 covenants. One covenant is from Mount Sinai and bears children who are to be slaves. This is Hagar. Now Hagar stands for Mount Sinai in Arabia and corresponds to the present city of Jerusalem, because she is in slavery with her children. But the Jerusalem that is above is free, and she is our mother. For it is written, "Be glad, barren woman, you who never bore a child. Shout for joy and cry aloud, you who are never in labor. Because more are the children of the desolate woman than of her who has a husband." At that time, the son born according to the flesh persecuted the son born by the power of the Spirit. It is the same now. But what does Scripture say? Get rid of the slave woman and her son, for the slave woman's son will never share in the inheritance with the free woman's son. Therefore, brothers and sisters, we are not children of the slave woman, but of the free woman.
This is pretty weird to wrap your head around. Paul makes another reference to Genesis and Abraham. God promised to give Abraham a son, and Abraham becomes impatient, so he sleeps with one of his slaves. Now the slave gives birth to a son, and he's called Hagar. This son, as Paul says, was born according to the flesh, which is the same way I was born. Abraham then has another child with his wife, Sarah. Sarah gives birth to a son, and this is the son that God promised. Paul uses these 2 children as a metaphor. The women represent 2 different covenants. One represents the covenant on Mount Sinai and bears children who are to be slaves. This is Hagar. Paul says that Hagar represents the covenant made by God to Moses on Mount Sinai. This is another way of describing the law. Paul says that the law brings about children that are slaves. The thing about the first century, when this was written, is that if your parents were slaves, you were a slave. And if your parents were free, then you were free. Paul says that the Christians in Galatia are not like Hagar. They're not children of slaves. Now you, brothers and sisters, like Isaac, are children of promise. Being a child of promise seems to mean something. Otherwise, Paul wouldn't spend so long talking about it. He says that Hagar persecuted Isaac, and even now, children of slavery persecute children of freedom. But he also says that children of slavery won't have the same inheritance as the children of freedom.